offering. Okay, so a lot of what I'm talking about here is based upon a book called The 5 Steps to Your Best Year Ever. It's a revolutionary book. I've gone through a couple things with him, and it's been fantastic. But this particular segment is completing the past. Okay, so what we're talking about is, in order to go forward, a lot of times you need to go backwards. Okay, and that seems a little bit counterintuitive, but the reality is we all carry baggage around, okay, from the past, driving force of why you do and why you don't. I call it the longing versus the lie, and a depth of insecurities that we have from our past. So, I'm just giving you a couple of my own historical things that were in my past. When I was in grade school, I was a nerd. I used to always try to go up to the 3rd level, and I'd get the living daylights beat out of me, although I kept going up there. I'm not sure why. But when I thought about it, I was longing for acceptance. But the lie was that I was going to get it from the cool kids. Okay. When I was in my adolescent years, I got older, I got into a lot of trouble and ended up in detention centers. And so you look back and kind of reflect and go, what was I longing for? I was longing for help and attention. But the lie was it only happens by rebelling, is how I'm going to get it. If I look at history of my drive to start different companies and grow them, my longing was for achievement and significance, but the lie was your success will give it to you, ultimately, at the end of the day. My failure in my first marriage, I was longing for freedom. The lie was divorce was the only avenue for that. My failure in my business partnership in this firm was my longing for recognition and control, but the lie was it only happens by him losing. So, the reason I bring this up is that a lot of times we have to go back in order to really launch forward. It's hard to go back. Sometimes not that I illuminate on these things, but when I have to kind of turn around and do a little reflection from time to time, it's painful, because you're like, I just don't want to remember that. I remember I actually ended up at a boys ranch with one of my cousins, and he ended up going way off the deep end and ended up in prison. And he's doing really well now, in his career. And I remember having lunch with him, and I said, do you remember, da da da? And I was kind of laughing a little bit about it. And he literally said, how do you want to talk about it? I was like, okay. So for him, he just did not want to go back at all. And so which I, respect that, but, ultimately, a lot of times we have to go back just to reflect. There should be a reason why, but, ultimately, we're doing it for the intention of so we can launch forward. So, and I'm going to be a little bit more pulling you guys in with comments as I go through these, but is there any thoughts around that concept? You kind of understand the concept I'm talking about, the longing versus the lie, and just trying to go back to sort of deal with things. So I just want to make sure that is clear to people, or if you guys have comments.
It's clear to me. I think that, it makes sense. And I think that you bring up a good point that it's hard to go back to those moments. But ultimately it shows us growth, and it shows where we are now. And so I think that reflecting on that is super important for our overall growth in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think too, lies tend to be like thematic in our lives. And so I think it's so crucial that we look back and find the lie so that we can stop believing it, right? So we can change and move forward differently, because otherwise it's just going to continue to creep all over our lives and, just wreak havoc. So I think it's just really important to nip it.
So true. Yeah, you have to kind of know what it is for what it is, and then you can, start working on not having that become thematic, as you say, which is absolutely good.
Yeah, it's probably things we're telling ourselves at the time that we're not realizing. If you look back reflecting, something you realize is a lie without reflecting on it, and you just move past and grow. But if you don't take the time to look back, um, you're not going to have that opportunity to actually grow from it. It's just something you've kind of done, but you're not really gaining the wisdom or the experience, I guess, without reflecting on how you used to think or where your mind previously was.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people can go through the experience, but they might brush it off and not really see it as something that could be fruitful for them, but just sort of brush past it and not learn from it. So it's good.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was thinking the idea of learning from the past and how do you move forward from the past? Because if we're caught up in our past, it's really difficult for us to make adjustments or change or find ways to make, to grow and learn. So I agree. That's a great point.
Good stuff, guys. Good comments. Okay, so after the action review, okay, so the first thing is we need to state what we want to happen. So when we go back, if we're going to do that, we have the very first thing we have to say to ourselves. That's why I say you have to be careful about going in the past, because some people spend too much time in the past, which is a lot of the reasons why we feel depression, is we just illuminate on the past. And so we have to really ask ourselves the question is what are we trying to have happen? Okay, what is the goal of us going to this moment or to this time or to this thing? And so that's a really important part, is to help, you got to get specific about it, just so you can know for sure. Can you guys hold on 2 seconds? My wife's called a couple of times just to make sure she's okay. Hey babe, are you okay? Okay. No, I'm teaching right now. Is that okay? Can I call you back? Okay. Yes, I will do it and walk out. So, okay, hold on. Hey guys, I've got to take this. Can you guys just chat amongst yourself for just a minute? Is that okay?
Yeah, totally.
No problem.
Yeah. What's going on?
Hey guys, we're being recorded.
Just we'll edit this bit out, Dan. It's okay.
All right, Tom, tell me how you really feel.
I know. I was gonna say. I know how you feel, Dan. Tell me. Oh, Michelle, you weren't there.
I might have
Discuss
called
with
Tom
Michelle.
a name yesterday that
Hurt my feelings a little.
Sorry, Tom. It's usually you say names to people because you're jealous of them, and I'm just jealous of you.
I don't think that's true, but okay, I'll roll with it.
Try to cover the damage that's been done.
It was so funny though, Michelle. We were in a meeting and Dan and Maggie are like similar on their personality tests, and I'm not. So Dan called me the black sheep.
Aw, you're not a
That's
black.
all right.
You're like you're I love that black little ball. Like this spotted unicorn sheep.
I'll roll with it.
Our moderators like maybe like Baby Yoda might be a better one for it or something.
Yeah, I didn't get the Yoda thing. What was the Yoda thing about?
I think she was trying to make it sound like it's a less of a blow if you say you're like a Yoda, not the black sheep.
Meeting was this, so you had a moderator.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan and I always have to have a moderator when we talk because he says nasty things otherwise.
Oh man.
She's more of an ugly duckling that never grew up, not a black sheep.
I have
You
to.
like that, Mackie? I worked the duckling into today's meeting somehow.
Oh, I die when you put him in the PowerPoints.
I'm glad you appreciate that. But on your question earlier, Mackie, do you have a copy of that hot money that Dave sends out?
No, I don't.
Because we could totally fire that off to you.
Yeah, because I always hear you guys talking about hot money, but I don't, to be honest, know what it means.
It's basically a rate sheet.
Okay.
They put it together monthly, and it just industry for the rates and for specific industries, but then there's also another panel that covers loan structures and whatnot. So it's lots of good information, but it's updated monthly. So
Tom, I think we got most of that, but I think because you and Dan are in the same room, if you guys are both unmuted, then
Oh, yeah.
we lose you a little bit in the tunnel.
okay. I'll fire this off to you, Mackie, and once you see it, you'll see what the information is. It's useful. It's good rates and all that good stuff, and loan structures. I can send it to you too, Michelle, if you're interested.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. Yeah, go ahead and send it to me.
Okay.
Michelle, do you know what your, oh,
What's that?
never mind.
Sorry, no, go ahead, guys. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
Is everything okay, Dave?
Yeah, just, yes, it is. It's just stuff with our son that we're trying to sort of figure out right now for some challenges at school we're trying to work through. So, yeah. So everything's okay. Thanks for asking. Sorry if I interrupted you. Were you guys on to the topic?
No, we were just talking about sending over hot money to Mackie and Michelle so they can kind of see some insight on what we have on our side.
Michelle was telling me she wants to get into sales.
Yeah, we can start selling that way.
All right, let me pick us back up here if I can remember. Okay, so ultimately, what you're going to do once you get specific is you want to jot down what the disappointment is. So, what was the disappointment that you dealt with? What happened in the past? And you also, again, remember, have to be honest. What really happened? How did it happen? Why is that so painful? Because again, you have to call it what it is, and so you can just be honest. Okay. And then you have to take time to focus on what you did well as well. So I think it's important to be balanced about that, just to, not only just focus on what was the disappointment, what went wrong, but I think we also have to be real careful to also keep, looking at the things that went well. What do we need to celebrate, or what obstacles did we overcome? The fourth thing is to probably just write down a pithy statement of what you learned, and it's maybe somewhere visual that you can see it, so that it can remind you. For example, for me, it might be, hey, slowing down to talk to people for wisdom helps me accelerate my growth, right? So, as opposed to not slowing down. So that just might be like a pithy statement. It might be something you type out and put on your computer or your mirror or something along those lines. But it just helps you kind of remember. And so you can kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, I need to go back to square one. And then finally, you just need to change your habits, right? And behavior. As statement I always say is, habits eat willpower for breakfast. We always kind of think willpower gets us out of things, but it's actually habits. Start moving into new behaviors and just putting new priorities and making them incremental. It's really important. Sometimes we think of habits as this massive shift of the New Year's resolution, but a lot of times, and I'd say more so, when things start to change, is they're just incremental. They're just small little changes that you can make as well. So comments before I move on that, or statements, questions?
I just really, really love that quote you just said about habits and willpower. And just, yeah, that just really rang true for me, because there's definitely areas of my life where I'm lacking discipline. And I feel like changing habits on a small level, knowing that that's really powerful, is very encouraging for me.
That's awesome. Okay, regret reveals opportunity, and you go, what? But regret reveals opportunity. A lot of times there's this comment of waiting and seeing what better thing is to come right over the horizon when things tend to go south. That's a lot of things that I'll look at when things go haywire or they're moving in a bad direction. I always have kind of tried to train my soul to think, well, there's something really exciting right over the horizon from all this that is going to be really amazing. And so, if you think about my own life, a lot of it was just this story of ambition to make money and be significant. And, I ruined a lot of relationships, and it was, painful for a lot of people, not just me. I heard a lot of people's in my life, and I regret it. People say I don't have any regrets, and I'm like, gosh, I don't know what kind of life you were living, but I certainly do. But this regret is something that I've really been able to take the time to learn from and turn it into an opportunity, so that it's not just something that sits in my past that's a weight, but it's probably more of a launching pad. And so I think it's important for us to remember. A lot of times, people get tattoos and they might regret it, rightly so, because there really is no autocorrect on tattoos. A lot of times you'll see people put them on their face, and you kind of go, that was probably bad choice. But these tattoos in our life, a lot of times we need to remember they're there to teach us a lesson. And it doesn't really matter what happened. What matters is what you end up doing with that thing, and being real careful not to turn into a situation where you start to say, well, I am a screw up versus I screwed up, right? Big difference. I am a failure versus I failed. Is we have to be real careful about the language we use when it comes to regret. We don't want to soft sell it, but we also don't want to, make it our identity, at the end of the day. So I think that's important when we're dealing with regret. We have to be real careful as well to not have a confirmation bias. We experience what we expect. If we're constantly kind of looking for things in our life, that's what we'll find. You can kind of get up in the morning on the wrong side of the bed, and you're just on the hunt for, problems, and they'll show up, as we have confirmation bias. But we have to say, look, what is missing in our life, and what do we need to see to change, so that we can move forward in this area of regret? Because there really is instruction from regret. It is a form of information for you. That's a way you can possibly look at it. There is this motivation from that regret that could be launched into change in our life. And there is integrity and work in us as a moral compass. And so just remember that regret reveals an opportunity for us to launch forward in our life. So questions or comments before I go forward? Good. So there's the opportunity principle. And the opportunity principle is just taking steps towards the goal, is that we will literally experience the results of the effort, and the regret is for naught. Okay. And you should recall this sort of recollection should point forward to this new opportunity in our life, and it's a powerful indicator of a future opportunity. That's why we want to see the regrets in the past in our life. That frustrations point us towards what is possible, right? We talk about it in here, that innovation comes out of frustration. So we want to just remember that these frustrations point us towards what is possible, okay? Gratitude makes the difference. So gratitude makes the difference when we're dealing with looking in the past and also wanting to launch forward into the future and completing things appropriately. Coach K was the basketball coach. He actually just retired from Duke University, and he was the coach from 1980 to 2022. This guy was unbelievable. Had 5 national titles. That's unheard of. 13 Final Fours, 15 ACC tournament championships, 13 ACC regular championships. So, I mean, just has a unbelievable track record. But he really, really cared about his players. And what he would do at the beginning of every season was he would get a basketball and he would give it to the team, and what he would have them do is he would have them write down the people that they were grateful for that got them to where they are today. And they would hold that and carry it around all throughout the season as a reminder for them of the reason why they're here today is because of all the people that poured into their life. And he really focused on having his players have an attitude of gratitude for things, and to be grateful for all those people that have poured into their life. And people would fight over who was going to have the ball for the week, just so they could remind themselves of how grateful they were for where they were at. It's a lot of the reason why they were probably so successful. You know, in our own life, gratitude can be such a powerful thing. You don't think of it as this is a great tool for us to launch forward in our goals, but you know, they've done studies that people who, you know, they took 2 participant study groups and said, okay, we're going to have you guys do one set of goals and then another do a set of goals in isolation. And one group, they had every day write down in a gratitude journal. And at the end of it, the group that was doing the gratitude journal and the participants were like tremendously higher on setting their goal than the group that didn't. It was really a fascinating thing, and it was consistent all across the board. And just that one simple principle of gratitude could be the thing that launches you over the finish line of accomplishing or achieving your goals. You know, and you go, well, why? What is it underneath gratitude? And, you know, it produces resiliency. You know, if you're focused on all the things you don't have, you can easily just let the gas burn out. But if you're focusing on being grateful and what you do have, it creates a sense of resiliency inside you. It keeps you hopeful on things to come. It helps us believe that we have agency. It improves our patience, although that takes time and effort, but it gives you a sense of abundance. It helps you to be more kind. It just helps you broaden and build better. And so gratefulness is a fantastic tool to utilize as you're reflecting in your past, and not only on the regrets and things you need to grow on, but also for the things you could be grateful for. You know, even today when I was driving in, I, you know, found myself kind of maybe veering off into the things that weren't going right in the economy or whatever. And I had to like stop myself and say, no, I'm very grateful, you know, for the fact that I'm able to get in the car today and come up here and just be with you guys and just all the wonderful things that I have in my life. So, you know, just writing things down. One of the things me and my wife did when we were first married and we were had a mentor is he had us write down 50 things that we were grateful for about each other. And of course, when you're brand new married, you're like, I could do 100, you know, you're just so excited. And we thought it was the dumbest exercise because we're like, how is this going to make any difference? He said, let me tell you something. He said, years are going to go by. And he said that you're going to have a tough time even remembering one thing that you're grateful for, because you guys are going to struggle at times. And he goes, when that happens, I want you to pull this list out and read it off to yourself and to each other. And there's been times in our marriage where we've literally had to do that. We've had to read the list again and remind ourselves, the things that we're grateful for. And it immediately changes our attitude and appreciation for each other as well. And just even being prayerful and practicing thankfulness can be something. But what's interesting, and this is the final thing, is, you could do that for a while, and I have and do, but you can easily just, after a while, it becomes a little bit numbing. You can just go, well, I can take that for granted, or, after a while, it just kind of becomes, yeah, I'm thankful for this, and I'm thankful for that. And so there's this, which is kind of what they call the pleasure paradox, where eventually over time it fades. So there's this principle called the George Bailey principle or theory, that if you guys ever remember A Wonderful Life, remember George Bailey, and he, essentially had, went through this experience where he basically lost everything through some different decisions, and eventually came back, and you remember how just ecstatic he was, and he was so thrilled, and, just, going inside, and everybody was in his house, and Christmas Eve, and there was so much just excitement and exuberance. And so what happens is, when we mentally subtract something in our life, then what happens is we start to think, well, gosh, what if I didn't have that? What would I miss it? Would I be sad? And they actually have proven that this actually helps your gratitude go through the roof, because you really start to think about, gosh, if I didn't have this, I just really would have so much loss. And so it makes me appreciate this person or this thing that much greater. I even did this with my daughter the other night, or maybe it was in the morning. I came in and I was singing to her, which is always a frightful thing because my voice is horrific, but I'm always laughing about it. And she's like, oh, Dad, get out of here. And I said, well, I want you to think about it. I said, what if your dad was no longer around? I want you to think about that for a minute. Would you be sad that you missed this moment? And she paused for a minute. I was waiting for her to say, yeah, I wouldn't, get out of here. But she didn't. She said, no, I would. I would actually miss this, So it just made her think, and made me think as well, when we go through these situations. So what now? What do we do with this? And my challenge to you guys, whether you do it or not is your choice, but is I just encourage you to block a little time out over the weekend or whatever you feel is necessary, but just to reflect on your own regrets and past, and ask what was the lure? What was the lie? And how do you need to reframe it, so that you can really launch forward into the future in not only your personal goals, but certainly the ones we're going to accomplish together.